Hello, I'm Avi Klein. I'm the clinical director here at Downtown Somatic Therapy, and I'm here with Daniela Krausz. Krausz?
Yeah, you said it
Uh,
right.
is that right? One of our clinicians here. And Daniela, you have, well, at the time of this recording, it isn't up yet, but it will be up soon. A piece on our blog um, around the relationship, specifically for women, around their relationship with their bodies, food, movement, and how somatic therapy can be helpful for that. And really, I think you're talking about a specific population, which is, I guess, what we would call, help me out here, but sort of like the subclinical, um, not necessarily meeting the criteria for an eating disorder, but certainly having um, like what I don't know what we call like
Y-
disordered eating adjacent thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I would classify it as being a woman in New York.
Sure.
But beyond that, I think many women in New York, we struggle with the idea of that our body should be a certain way that is different than what it is.
Hmm.
And then there are a lot of behaviors that we do that, yeah, don't meet the clinical definition of an eating disorder that still maybe don't feel good, right? And come from somewhere, whether it's societal, intergenerational, and how somatic therapy can be helpful in unpacking where those messages have landed and how they sit with you, so you can decide whether or not you want to keep them.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
great. That was much better than my introduction, but thank you.
No, it was great.
And and before we get into questions about the piece and working with women who might identify this way, how did you come to be interested in this? Can you just sort of orient people to where you're?
Totally. So before I was a therapist, I have worked as a personal trainer. And I think, I really worked a lot with people who had either injury recovery or some sort of chronic illness or had some trauma around being in a gym or exercise environment, maybe from being classified as obese as kids, right? There's a lot of people that would come through my door and women across like all ages, generally like 20s to 40s. Um, what I noticed over and over was like there were so many ways, and I saw it in myself too, right? We as women hide from or react to messages that we're being told about our body. And I saw women in that I would train would feel so overwhelmed by just moving, like, and what it would mean about them and about being in their body. And as I became a psychotherapist, I just kept hearing women when I would, talk to them in initial conversations just about their relationship with their body and with food. And there was a constant theme pretty much of like, yeah, there is something about my body that I don't like and I don't know how to be with. And I don't want to be with. And so that really drove me to keep digging into that combination.
Yeah. So one of the things that I would love for you to unpack for me and for anyone watching this is, I think one of the tricky things is, we're talking about when it comes to our relationships with uh, diet and exercise. Like these are, there's a whole range of sort of like healthy, unhealthy, your motivation for why you might be doing this. So can a woman or anyone for that matter tell the difference between using movement or exercise to care for their body versus to control or punish it?
That is a really good question. I mean, I would say, listen, some days you're tired and you feel like it would be good to work out anyway, right? And you know that movement is good for you. And right, as a therapist, I say, like, go for a walk, right? It's good to be outside, it's good to move your body. I think there are times where I've talked to clients and they'll tell me that they think they're lazy because they haven't really been in the gym for the last 2 weeks, or they will be like, my head could hit the pillow right now, but I'm also going to go lift weights after. And those are signals to me that there's something else happening where you're not really listening to your body, but maybe more to like what your mind is telling you your body should be doing, right? I think like when we bring should into the conversation, that is when I start to notice that there is maybe this thing of controlling or punishing your body for being like how it is. And yeah,
It's almost like there's a gap between, and again, we're all trying to walk this line, but self-acceptance, self-compassion versus some other idea about who you're supposed to be.
yeah. I mean, I can almost think of it like imagistically, I would think of it like it's almost like you're on two train tracks on the subway, right? Like it's such a subtle shift. You might be going in the same direction, but you are on a different track, right? Like the end result might be the same. You might still get to Union Square, but there's one way that can feel like you're going to make more stops, you're going to rest, you're going to listen, and there's one that's just maybe going to feel like you are pushing yourself like through and through and through. And a way that somatic therapy can be helpful at first is just by stopping to push, right? Like sitting with the idea of not pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And why should someone, I mean, just to like play devil's advocate, like why should they care about that? I mean, if I mean, we're in New York, we've got a lot of highly ambitious, motivated people here. Why shouldn't they push themselves? What's wrong with pushing yourself so
That is a great, I love that. Be a devil's advocate. You absolutely can, and you can push yourself as much as you want to, right? And I think ambition and drive and having hopes and dreams is great. I think for me, when I think about it and when I speak to a lot of women, there's this like icky feeling that can come with it where it just, your gut can start to tell you if you're listening, like, but like, this isn't pushing us toward long-term benefit, right? And that's maybe a more like somatic level. I mean, I would say from like a personal training level, pushing and pushing and pushing without giving your body your time for rest or recovery, I mean, you are more prone to injury, right? On a like therapeutic level, on a mental health level, I think to push without being mindful of how we're pushing can lead us to a point where we have to use coping mechanisms like talking to ourselves really harshly or self-critically, that, it can be painful. It can be painful to get to a point where you're pushing without even noticing, do I need to be pushing? What am I pushing for? Like, am I doing this for me anymore? Yeah. And if you're not doing it for you, right, then at least notice who you're doing it for. Pause long enough to, I don't know, not a hard and fast rule, but maybe an invitation to just like notice what you're doing.
in a way you're saying like the same way that we need to accept our physical limitations and rest or we'll injure ourselves. And there are many people who think that they should just sort of power through or ignore the pain signals that their body is giving them, that something similar is happening on an emotional level where if you continue to ignore the parts of you that are struggling in some way, you're going to pay a price by feeling bad emotionally later on.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good way to put it. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that is actually a fantastic way to put it. That feels pretty accurate. Yeah.
So working with this issue, there are a lot of dimensions to it, right? And in your piece, you write, I mean, it's intergenerational, it's cultural, and it's sort of like across a person's lifespan, right? That the way that we relate to ourselves, although this feels like, it's particularly a problem, like you said, you work with a lot of women ages 20 to 40, that the origins of this might go back further than that. So when a client comes in and they say something very concrete, like they can't stand to look at a part of their body or they have negative feelings about that, as a therapist who's working somatically, what are you listening for underneath that statement? How do you track that statement to what's underneath that?
Yeah. And I mean, I would say this is where my approach is somatic and also relational and a bit psychodynamic, right? So I think first we want to understand like where did you learn that, right? Like, where did that first happen for you? Often I'll do this by us, like trying to slow down and breathe and be with that part of your body that you are having trouble being with, right?
Can I
And
pause
see,
you right there?
yeah.
For people who don't understand what's important even about slowing down and breathing, like why do that?
Hmm. I mean, first of all, doesn't breathing just feel good? um, I mean, but really, I mean, it's a mindfulness practice as well. And right, we can all talk about mindfulness till we're blue in the face and beyond. And also taking a moment to just sit with yourself and recognize that like you are your body and your body is your home is just so important to connecting to your body in any way, shape, or form, to doing any part of this work, right? And also maybe opening up a pathway to like in the long run or maybe immediately, it depends, right? Feel grateful for your body or be like feel grateful that you have a body, that you can experience sensation, that you can experience your chest rising and falling. Yeah. Um,
I interrupted you. So I said,
I lost my train of thought a little.
so we were talking about how you go back to sort of trace this, and you were starting with like, how did you learn this, and slowing down and breathing as a way to kind of get into a mindful state.
Yeah. Yeah. And, once we're in that state, the somatic part of it really would be, in my mind, like, is when you're breathing, seeing if you can feel that part of your body. And does it have a is there a feeling? Is it like a tightening? Is it a punching? Is it an aching, a twisting, right? And naming that sensation. And oftentimes what will come up, maybe not all the time, but some sort of, memory or relationship that you can recall forming with a part of your body, right? Like, um, you know, without dropping names, like there are celebrities that post photos of a waistline that is, seems to defy all logic. And that can be a moment where you look at yourself as a young, like a teenager, and have this feeling of like a tightening in your waist. And when you think of it, that can still be that tightening sensation come up, right? So that, and then beyond that, talking about, what society has taught us, right? Like, yes, there's a somatic memory. And then there's also like, what does it mean that like people become famous for things like this and get lauded for things like this? And then, I mean, I don't know, I won't say I don't know, but most women I know grew up with mothers who grew up with mothers who grew up in societies that were critical toward wrinkles, cellulite, a certain waistline, or, there are so many things around aging and the fluctuations that women's bodies have month over month, let alone year over year, week over week, that for generations have been picked apart by others. And then, those messages don't just hit a brick wall. Like, we are porous people, right? Like, things get to us. So I think all like focusing on the intergenerational piece, the somatic piece, the societal piece, and how it has sat with you. And in the end, really coming back to the body and being like, okay, we have all this information. Where is it sitting within us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think like
Yeah.
that is what I would be focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, and I mean, one of the things I'm hearing you say, we're really trying to take things that might seem completely logical, second nature, right? Like, of course there's something wrong with my body, right? That like when you're swimming in these cultural waters, that would seem like an obvious thought to think, and trying to question that and interrupt it, that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and I mean, we are constantly inundated with like social media platforms that are constantly selling us this thing that's gonna be a miracle cure for whatever like part of our body we don't like, or how much water retention we're holding on to, or like there's it's maybe a specific example, but there are constant messages I mean, and it's not just social media, right? This has been happening for a long time, but there are these constant messages of like, you are not enough, or you are too big, or you are too old, or um, if only your nose, jawline, anything looked like that, then you would be okay, right? All the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. So one thing I know, I've had clients like this. I imagine you have as well. We're doing this work. We believe that connecting to our bodies, connecting to our emotions is important and healing, and yet sometimes I've had clients who have complicated relationships with their bodies, and they really feel quite numb. They feel disconnected from their bodies. So I guess this is two parts. The first question is, how do you think about that, about clients who are numb or disconnected from their bodies? And if someone was interested in doing this kind of work and was like, I don't even know what I'm feeling, how would they get started?
Yeah. Great two-parter. You may have to repeat in the middle, but to
Yeah.
answer the first part, I mean, being disconnected and numb from our bodies comes from somewhere, right? And it started as a protection, right? You needed that. You, for whatever reason, right? And even from what we were just talking about, being inundated with messages of like, your body is not enough as it is. It's enough to just tune out, right? And it doesn't have to be that. There are a lot of reasons, ways, histories that can bring us to feel like, oh, I can't be in here right now. And, it has really served you and saved you for a long time is what I would say. And what I do say to clients like that, I have so much compassion toward it. And it's not something to resent or throw away just because. The second part of like how to maybe start to engage with your body.
Yeah.
I believe there's a bunch of ways, and I think I would tailor it to any specific client. But I think my personal favorite, I think a lot of somatic work and a lot of work on figuring out where messages come from, we're calling on our younger selves a lot. And when we were little, we dreamed and imagined and experienced the world through play. And so I think that for me, a first somatic intervention, I always like for it to be a little bit playful, simple, but just remembering that like, and also maybe to engage with the woo-woo-ness of it that it can sometimes feel like, let's go into play. The way that I do this usually is wiggling like your toes or putting your hands kind of in there and wiggling your fingers and just feeling what it feels like to maybe have your feet on the ground and to lift your toes up and to move them in a way you don't normally, right? Or to feel like air on your hands, like, right? And just to be noticing in that moment what it feels like to do something that normally you're way too busy to do or really don't feel comfortable to be enough in your body to do. And they're such neutral parts of your body, right? And they do so much for us. So yeah, that would be where I would probably start.
And what would you hope? So I love that because I agree. It's like you're inviting people to start to become more aware of sensations, right? Which is in the long run, one of our goals is the more we feel sensations, we can maybe access deeper feelings that are connected to those sensations. And, you mentioned sort of like clenching your stomach or other things that might be reminders of more painful experiences, but you're starting in a safer, more playful way by just focusing on fingers and toes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said that, I was just reminded of the kids' rhyme, even like head, shoulders, knees. Not the same thing, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
but yeah, I think it can bring some levity and some awareness to what maybe feels like a very elusive and for some people scary process, right? Like to be in your body again feels like, are you serious? What does that even look like? Right. Yeah.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet, right? We're focusing specifically on women's mental health here, and for one of the lesser acknowledged facts of Western medicine is that women have hormonal fluctuations. Their bodies are really changing over a 28-day cycle thereabouts, and that also affects their mood, their energy, their body. So, if you're working with someone who sort of expects a kind of regimented consistency for themselves, how would you help them tune into their body in a more attuned way, in a more accepting way of where their body's actually?
Yeah. Well, great question. The first thing I would do is ask what feels good about the consistency. Like, what about the regimen do you really want to keep, right?
Mm-hmm.
What has served you and what do you feel like you want to continue to serve you? And then that maybe makes some space for what about it doesn't feel good, right? Like, if you experience pain and bloating at a certain point in your month, and you don't have clothes that like help you feel comfortable with the way that your body changes, and then it's just a trigger for you to feel bad about yourself, right? It's a kind of a practical tool, but if that's not working for you, how can we be attuned to those moments and create systems that help you feel, that don't push you toward self-criticism in days or weeks where your body's just acting a little differently? Because routine and like consistency are great, right? And also noticing parts where you can even make a routine that is less day over day but more month over month can be really helpful, right? And attuning to what you need and when you need it. And also with the seasons, things change.
So my last question is, I feel like if I were going to zoom out, what we're broadly talking about, and tell me if you disagree, but we're talking about control. We're talking about having an attitude towards one's body, one's emotions, that's really centered around control. And I think that I'm thinking about something you said before about appreciating what is important about being numb. I'm thinking about what's important about feeling in control, and how someone might arrive at a different relationship with themselves. What's also not great about feeling in control.
The first thing that comes to mind, we talk about almost like the pros and cons of being in control, which it's not that simple, but I remember once reading like a caption or something that was like, "You're not in control and you never will be." And I, to this day, like, still don't really like even understand that, right? Like, to some extent, yes, I get it. And to others, like, you do have choices that you can make in your life and in your day. And, I recognize that wanting to control is really good in some ways because it means that you have agency and you have choice and you get to make choices and those choices get to have consequences, right? All of that feels pretty healthy to me. So control serves us in some ways, right? Like, for sure. Where the relationship with control can get a bit sticky and a bit unhelpful, is when that becomes our first priority, right? When that becomes like, when the control almost starts controlling us, right? Mm-hmm. When the feeling of wanting to make a different choice feels out of line with rules that we have maybe set up in the name of control. Like when it becomes a little too rigid, and I when I work with clients about control, really it's about recognizing that the way that they have learned and continue to teach themselves is not the only way. What are other ways? And then what way do you want to choose, right? And recognizing that other ways of approaching things are valid, right? Like, even...
Well, one of the things that we're talking about, just to jump in, and I agree with you, is we're really talking about controlling emotions, I think, and which does create some inflexibility, because emotions, we are not in control of how we feel, unfortunately. And when we try and keep them at bay, our bodies often recognize that it has a cost. It's really energy draining. It's really painful, right? If you tense yourself all the time, that hurts.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. And I mean, the body keeps the score
Yeah.
as
It's
Bessel
back
van der
here
Kolk.
somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, you can apply control to so many things around this topic, right? Like you can apply it to the behaviors and the thoughts.
Hmm.
And really what they are all doing is, yes, controlling, maybe pushing down, maybe stopping, pushing around emotions. Um, and when we can sit with those emotions, when we can look at alternative paths, recognize how they make us feel, recognize what comes up for us, if we like it, if we don't like it, we are just giving space for emotions to come up. And when we process those emotions, I mean, we free ourselves of so much, right? We when we can sit with those feelings, we can recognize whether or not we need them, whether or not like we can hear them, we can hear what they're trying to say, and it really paves a path toward self-acceptance and self-love.
Yeah, that's right. And that is, you're mentioning another sort of consequence of needing to be in control all the time means that you're not accepting parts of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that you are forcing yourself to live in a narrower space in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so much around for when I think about when a woman tells me she wants her body to be smaller, like there is this feeling of, and that is obvious, like there is a lot of rooted in control, right? That temptation to want to do something about it. I mean, to me, it's always a signal of feeling like, what about you is not enough? What ways do you need to make yourself narrower to
Hmm.
be narrower, right? Like that. And I think that's a really powerful, making yourself narrower is a really powerful indicator to me to make space
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Daniela, thank you. People can read your post on our website. They can find you on our website if they're curious to work with you. And thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care.